Everybody, happy Thursday. We hope you're all enjoying this wonderful late December day. My name is Kate. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Main Street ROI, and we're very excited to be on the line today presenting the final webinar in 2017's marketing series, which we've been running since August, actually. Big thanks to all of the sponsors who have been involved not only in inviting their audiences to each webinar, but also sharing really great content throughout the series. We have Acquisio, Conversa, SpyFu, and then of course, we have Optmyzr who will be presenting on how to automate your PPC campaigns. We'll be launching a whole nother Master Your Marketing series come 2018, so definitely be on the lookout for that. A few things to note for today. This webinar is being recorded, so we will make sure to send out video today via email so you can watch those and look for a replay as needed. And throughout the webinar, if you have questions that start to come up, you can comment in the Q&A box that you should see on your screen. We'll see Q&A be able to spread some questions as they come up, but certainly feel free to comment in there. I'll be looking out to make sure that there's no connectivity issues or things of that nature. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Fred from Optmyzr to get started with today's webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you today. So let's see if I can get the slides to move here. There we go. So today we're going to talk about automating PPC, and specifically I'm going to talk about automating AdWords. So my name is Fredriks Vallaeys. My claim to fame, I joined Google back in 2002, and I was involved in building a lot of the products you probably use today if you're managing AdWords. So AdWords Editor, for example, I was on the founding team of that. I was involved in building the conversion tracking pixel because amazing feedback. Was a day, in fact, before you could track conversions in something like Google AdWords. So I did that for 10 years. In 2012, I decided to move on and start doing something different. And what's the easiest way to make a little bit of money while you figure out your next thing to do when you come out of Google having built AdWords? It's consulting. So started doing that, and kind of to my shock and dismay, it was really time consuming, right? I thought we built these amazing tools in AdWords Editor to make things really super easy. And yes, they are good tools, but when you're actually managing accounts yourself, you're so much time on the phone talking to customers. And at the end of the day, you're like, oh, there's all these things that I know I should be doing, I want to be doing, and I just didn't have time for it. So I started looking at automation to actually help me deliver the results that I was promising to my customers. Eventually, that turned into my Optmyzr. And in fact, I'm not going to talk much about Optmyzr here today. That's not really the purpose of this call, but I do know some people want to leverage tools like Optmyzr for automation. So if that's something you're interested in, by all means, reach out to me, and I'm happy to give you a one-on-one demo of our tools. Today, I'm going to speak more kind of at the level that I do on search engine land, for example. So what are the trends in automation? What are sort of the bigger topics that you can do? So, but the reason that I think a lot of you came to this call today is because you sort of have the same frustrations that I used to have. We know what we should be doing. Like, why can't we be automating some of this stuff, right? And it's because if you have PPC account managers, they will come into the office wearing T-shirts like this. They always tell me, hey, keep your slides clean, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I do a pretty good job. But these are actual T-shirts people wear. I think it's okay to put this up here. In fact, one of the sponsors of this whole series, Acquisio, this is their T-shirt. They came out with this slogan, and it really resonated. And why did it resonate? Well, it's because marketers tend to be creative people, and when you ask them, hey, now you got to manage 50 accounts and you got to do repetitive tasks, putting it into Excel, doing VLOOKUPs, doing pivot tables. Like eventually they just sort of start hating their jobs, right? So we should be able to automate some of that work so that you keep your employees happy and so that you keep your own sanity as well as you take on more and more work. Now, the other reason to talk about automation is that Google didn't exactly make it easy on us as PPC marketers. So, you know, it's kind of like raising children, I think, for all of those of you who have children. It's like the moment that you figured out kind of how to deal with your child at a certain age, everything changes and you have to relearn it all over. It's kind of, so for everyone who sort of figured out how to deal with budget management, all of a sudden there last month, Google throws a wrench into the system and basically says, well, the over delivery promise that we won't spend more than 120% of your daily budget on any given day, that will 200% of daily budget. Okay, so, you know, everything was going well and now all of a sudden you have to deal with this. So automation to the rescue. So I was able to write just 30 lines of code that can give you back the control, where you can now say you want to spend maybe 20% over your budget that you're so it's actually giving you more control than you had in the past. And that's the beauty to me, the fact that in 30 lines of code, I'm able to automate something. This, by the way, what you see on the screen, this is an AdWords script. So you just install it in AdWords scripts, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But now this thing is checked out. I hit my over delivery target for a certain day, it'll actually go and pause that campaign for the rest of the day, so I don't have to worry about it. Now, there's also some cases to be made against automation, obviously. You know, so this is not, you know, a real slide. In fact, when I was Tesla, I was driving the car themselves and drove it into the signpost. But, you know, I thought it was funny because Tesla is known as the self-driving car company. They've logged quite a few miles with their autopilot system. And so if you just let the autopilot and the automation go unchecked, you do run into situations potentially where it crashes. Things happen. Same thing can happen in PPC. So whenever we do use automation, we do have to be cautious. And the other point about automation is that, you know, sometimes you can game it. So here's a Google self-driving car. Now I see these driving around my house quite a bit, you know, where I used to work. And so see about 30 of these every day. I know exactly how they will behave on the road. Now, one day I'm on my bicycle and I'm going to the gym and I have to cross 4 lanes of traffic. And the road is completely clear. It's a beautiful sunny day, so visibility is perfect. The only car towards me is one of these self-driving cars. And it's relatively close to where I'm going to make the turn. But I'm like, hey, that's a self-driving car. It seems to be in self-driving car mode. The way I could tell was it's driving quite slowly. But I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. If it was a normal car, I'd probably learn a self-driving car. I know it's conservative. I know it's programmed not to kill other humans on the road. So I'm probably okay making this move. The fact that I'm here on this webinar presenting today tells you that it all went well. And so that's kind of the other downside of automation, right? So sometimes because you can only automate what you can actually really put into a process, a defined process. It sometimes it's too conservative. So it enables you, if you do stuff manually, to take advantage of it. Or if you do fully automate, it may actually limit your exploration of more things. You're talking about automation. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I wrote on Search Engine Land, and I've been writing a lot about it. It's the topic of artificial intelligence. So what is going to be the role of the human PPC manager in a world that's being driven by artificial intelligence? And I think when media talks about artificial intelligence and automation, they often make it sound like it's these humanoids, and it's artificial general intelligence. They call it AGI. So it's basically something where you can say, hey, listen, I got to run some ads on AdWords. Can you? The way the media often portrays it is it can do all parts of AdWords management. So it's going to go manage your budgets, it's going to go manage your bids, it's going to find new keywords, it's going to manage your ad text. That's sort of how the media often portrays automations. Now, the reality of artificial intelligence, what are people actually working in this space, is it's really very advanced statistics. And it's statistics with so much data and so much computing power, which we just simply didn't have access to in the past. So the statistics have been able to evolve. So you can try new models, you can try things, just a lot of math that's being done. And the types of artificial intelligence that we're seeing today tend to be point solutions. So it tends to be a solution that's going to do one thing very well. You could have one system that's going to do your bid management and a separate one that's going to do your budget management. Right? It's not one system that's going to magically handle your whole account. And so what that tells me for humans is we just need to learn to program to automate rote tasks. And that's why we're here today. I'll give you some insights into easy ways to do that automation. But then if you have an agency or company, actually to help you build models that will power your own artificial intelligence. By the way, there's no need for us to just fully rely on Google and what they're doing in artificial intelligence. Those same techniques, the same statistics they're using, we can deploy those within our own companies. And as long as we have access to enough data, we can do interesting things with that. Now, here's an example to illustrate maybe a little bit of that whole statistical approach, right? So when people, this is a picture of a hotel room, obviously, and that logo on the top left, that's IBM Watson. So when people talk about IBM Watson, it's a computer that can just do things. It can win Jeopardy, it can help doctors, etc. Now, if you ask IBM Watson to say, does this picture have curtains in it? It'll give you the right answer. But what people don't know is how it gets to the right answer. So here's how it works. Actually, for it to see curtains. But it is a little bit easier for it to notice that this looks like a bedroom because it has a bed, it has a dresser, there is a window in the picture. Windows are often associated with curtains, right? So there's all these little data points that it can now start to look at correlations. And so it'll say, well, bedrooms by curtains. Rooms with windows are more likely to have curtains. So there's enough statistical signals in here that say this is a room with a high likelihood of having curtains. So even though it cannot see specifically a curtain, just the way that you and I could as humans, it just makes it pretty good. Yes, this room probably does have curtains, and so it comes out with the right answer, right? So, but I think it's important to understand how the media often portrays artificial intelligence and automation, and how it really does work from a statistical perspective, because I think that points out some opportunities that we have. So, so for human role, as artificial intelligence and learning starts to take hold in more of what we do in terms of PPC management, I think we as humans can be the teachers. And so let me explain that through an example of something I worked on quite a bit while I was at Google. So I worked on Quality Score. Quality Score has been around for a really long time. I just where Susan Wojcicki, who was then the senior VP of ads at Google, publicly disclosed that the machine learning system was called Smart Ass. Right, so it's kind of a funny play on words there. Instead of smart ads, it was smart ass. But it was a system. The way that this machine learning system worked was as follows, and you see the points here, but humans have a premise of what may make for a good ad. In fact, human raters at Google, or on behalf of Google, will look at ads and they will say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how good each ad is. Once they start saying bad ad, they collect data and they build a model. Okay, and so then they run that model and then they test the results and they see, does this model of predicting which is a good ad and a bad ad, does that actually correspond to how human raters have evaluated these results? And so then we get a bit of time, but eventually we've been able to teach the machine how to pick up on the things that human raters said correspond to being a bad ad. And then you can actually launch a model that improves these ads. So again, it looks like magic when you're on the outside, but when you're on the inside, there's a lot of this going on. And so as far as humans being teachers to the machines, here's kind of a cool example, but we looked at Quality Score. And so real-time Quality Score looks at all these factors that may help predict how good an ad will be. So what time of day is it? What type of device was the user on? In the keywords. Right, those are the factors we all know about. Now, one day, we as the human teachers to the machine learning system said, well, what about the lunar cycle? Does that have an impact on the click-through rate? Now, that's a question the machine wasn't going to ask by itself. That was human activity human coming in and said, okay, let's take a look at lunar cycle and how that compares to click-through rates on ads. And we asked the question, does it impact it? And so in fact, it did not. It does not have an impact on CTR, but we were able to teach the machine to go look at that, come up with an answer. And then of course, if it had said, yes, lunar cycle is important, then we would have made that the quality score model. So, but a lot of teaching going on there. Now, why this is exciting, I think, for everyone on this call is that these machine learning models, you can actually take publicly available systems from Google using the same technologies that they use, can build on top of your own data. So this is kind of a symbolic representation where it's just figuring out circles and triangles and squares and kind of putting them in the right bucket. So it's a categorization example. But we've used this sort of a model to do our own conversion rate predictions. Google has to figure out when to show an ad for a certain query. They match that to a keyword, but that keyword could be a broad match keyword. So the query, what the user searched for, may not be exactly the same as the keyword that the advertiser had. So Google has to build a prediction of how closely related that is. They basically say, if we're this percentage certain that it might lead to a click, we're okay with showing that ad. Now that's an arbitrary threshold that people at Google have determined. Kind of another funny example from the days I was at Google. So one day, Google, originally from Belgium. So I was the first Dutch speaker there. And they, one day they come in and they're like, here's a stack of papers, and these are pornographic words. Now we've sorted them based on the machine learning system by how pornographic we think they are. It's definitely pornographic and perhaps not pornographic. And so I, as a human, was just literally setting the threshold based on top of that machine learning system to help classify certain queries as one way or another. Same thing happens with that. Same thing happens with predictions. Now, when you're starting models, you can actually set the threshold. So you could be more conservative than Google. And if you become more conservative, it could actually improve your return on ad spend. So some really cool ways that you can use stuff like the neural network learning system that Google makes publicly available. Human pilots to these automation systems. One of my first jobs after leaving Google was to go in and consult for a big company that was doing custom apparel in the Bay Area. And what they had noticed was that they put a lot of stuff on autopilot, and they stopped looking at what was doing. And one day they'd launched a new website, and that new website wasn't really driving great results. So the conversion rate tanked. And as a result of that, the bid management system correctly said we should lower the bids because the conversion rate is really, really bad right now. Okay, so all good and well. They take a few days. They launched the whole page again, conversion rate. But nobody went back to the bid management system to say, hey, things were bad for those couple of days. We know why. Reset. Okay, there was no reset that they did. So for 6 months, some of their most important keywords had lingered with those low bids that put them on page 2 of the search results. And when I came in, what had happened? Why these keywords were no longer performing, and then they were able to fix it. But so the risk is if you just put it on autopilot, and you basically walk away and you don't monitor it, things can go really, really badly. Now, the third role that I think we as humans have, and this is going to give, we are coordinators. So if you think about the fact that we have expert systems, by and large, doing these automations. So these are not general automations. These are specific automations to do budgets, bids, ad texts, keywords, individual components. So step one is some experts. So my own purpose, I draw a quadrant like this, and I basically try to put tasks on this quadrant of what do I do often and what takes me a lot of time. And now these are going to be examples, but take this and do it for your own business. Okay, so updating budgets, I don't want to when I do it, it doesn't really take me that long. So it goes right there. Something like managing bids, well, that we're doing all the time, but it's relatively quick. It's based on just a couple of calculations we do, and we make some quick bid changes. Now reporting, that actually takes quite a bit of time, but luckily we don't Stuff like ad testing, while that we're trying to do it all the time, and if we want to do it right, it does take a lot of human creativity to actually write new ads, so it's time consuming. So now I say that box number 1, that's what we should automate first, because that's what we spend a lot of time on and it's what we do a lot. These next boxes, and then if we have some time left, maybe I'll get to automating budget updates, because it's relatively quick and infrequent. Now, actually, at Optmyzr, one of our most popular automations is for budget management. And that is probably because a lot of agencies are much more active managing budgets. I myself am for managing budgets for my own Optmyzr PPC campaign. So again, this is just an example. Make sure you put your boxes in the right places, and then that will guide what you should optimize first. Okay, so then the other thing about what can you really automate? So the step really so usually that means, can I write down what I do as a bit of a system? So bid management is often automated, and it's because most people can write down what their bid management logic is. So as a very simple example, if I have at least 100 clicks, and at the same time my CPA is $20, then that's a good thing, and I'm happy to raise my bids by some percentage. Okay, so again, very simple. You probably want to do more sophisticated bid management, but it illustrates the fact that you can actually write down as a process how you go through it. Same thing with budget rules. If I have spent more than a certain allowed budget for the month, just campaigns, that's very easy to write down as a system. So this tends to be the type of stuff you can automate. Now, there are some other things that may not seem so automatable. So ad testing, ad text testing. A lot of people might think that's not something we can automate, but actually, if you break the task of ad testing into its components, you might be able to automate quite a bit of that. So ad testing for me looks something like this. First, I want to remove all of my losing ads. We've got a tool in Optmyzr that facilitates that based on A/B testing, but basically it's running statistical filter ads and saying these are the losers, so these are the ones we're going to pause. And then my next step is to find my best ad in every ad group, because I want to use that as the foundation for making new ad text variations. And then maybe step 3 is finding the best call to action, right? So how do I take my best current ad, even putting in a better call to action in the description line, for example. So these first 3 steps, these can be automated. This is just basically very process driven. It's very mathematical, easy to automate. Now, the final thing, starting the new test and actually combining through test and then sort of working that call to action into it, okay, that requires a little bit of grammatical knowledge, being able to write a good ad. So that's harder to automate. But if I can even get those first 3 steps done for me automatically, and I only have to do step number 4 manually, so don't something out as not automatable, because oftentimes you can still break it down. So step number 2 is choosing your tool, right? So now that you know what you want to automate, you're often going to be looking at Google's free tools, and Google's free tools are awesome. Obviously, I used to work at Google, so I was because I'm an ex-Googler. Google really does try to do great for advertisers, but a little bit of the downside sometimes is they have so many advertisers, so they have to put in place solutions that are good for a very large variety of advertisers, and you not look at it, right? So by automating something based on what you know is always going to be better than taking some generic solution. But on the flip side of that, Google's tools are much cheaper. So even stuff like automatic ad rotation, you may not think about that as an automation, but it basically is, because it helps you figure out what is and then prioritizes that. Now, we work with a lot of agencies and PPC experts who still want that level of control. So we have a tool that will do this for you and let you actually make the decisions. Portfolio bid strategies, that's another thing Google does, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a second. And then rules, so those are in order of increasing sophistication, the very customizable automations that you have. Now, you can also look at third parties. So Acquisio, a sponsor of this event, Optmyzr, my company. And then you have some others you probably heard about, like Kenshu and Marin. WordStream tends to be more SMB focused, so maybe not for PPC experts as much as some of the other tools, but more for a business owner who just wants to get active in PPC, but doesn't necessarily want to learn it too much. Now, why would you choose the AdWords tool? Well, it always has the free component going for it. With a third-party tool, you're always going to have to pay some amount of money. Now, in AdWords, they tend to be limited in terms of customizability, and they tend to be, like I said, generic because they have to service so many advertisers with the same tools. In fact, a lot of the inside of AdWords had to do with, should we have a different version of AdWords for different verticals? Frequently discussed that, but always came back down to saying, no, we need to have one AdWords that works for everyone. But that means things have to be somewhat generic at a certain level. So if you think about the opportunities, Apple makes good recommendations, but they're not great, right? And it's very hard to tweak them. Whereas if you go to a third-party tool, they may even do something that Google absolutely hates. So if you don't like near exact match keywords, you can actually write a script that will undo that change that Google believes the best thing for the million plus advertisers that they have, but it may not be the best thing for your specific situation. So it gives you that control back to tweak it. And then as far as performance, so Google has so much data, they can look across all of the accounts that they have. So nobody can beat Google. Now, on the flip side, with a third-party tool, you can often bring in your own company data, so margin-based data for e-commerce, or offline conversion data if you have a long sales cycle and if you're a B2B company. Now, with a third-party tool, they often make it quite easy to bring data on top of what Google may already be doing. So, for example, you could do enhanced CPC bidding, where Google uses some of its vast quantities of data, but you're still using your business data to at least set some base level bids that take that into account. Now, I promised I would talk the bid management, right? So it used to be in the old days of AdWords, you had a CPC bid, and that was it. So that was easy. And then they started bringing in bid adjustments or bid modifiers for day parting, locations, and devices. And then more recently, now you can do it for audiences. And so your audiences, it's based on segment things. So, but if you take that as an example, where we used to have one bid in the past, one bid for a keyword, now we can have tens of thousands of permutations of that bid. So we could be targeting 1,000 locations across 3 devices with 6 different day parts. That literally means that one keyword now can have 180,000 different bids against it, depending on exactly what the situation is. So, you know, nobody here has a one keyword in their account, by the way, right? So this very quickly gets out of control. To automate some of this. So option number 1 that you have is to do rules-based bidding. The rules-based bidding is very simple. You will just say, I'm going to run some filters. So for example, I'm going to find high converting keywords that in the last 30 days had at least 5 conversions. The last days we didn't have any conversions, but we also had very few impressions. And then that middle bucket is going to be your known converters. So they had a few conversions, but not too many. And then depending on which bucket something falls in, you're going to take a different action as far as what the bid strategy will be. Example, everything is considered by itself. So you can also translate it to an if this, then that type of scenario. So if my average position is too low, then I want to raise my bid. Now, one thing to make sure you're doing if you're using rules-based is to look at look-back windows. And you correct say that we're looking at the if condition. If my average position for these 3 weeks, every bar on that line, the x-axis identifying 1 week. So, but if I'm looking at 3 weeks of data, my bid is too low, my position is too low, I increase my bids, and then next week I run that same automation, but only 1 new data and 2 weeks of old data. So my average position is still heavily influenced by what was happening before I changed my bid. So if I'm raising my bid again, I may actually be raising it too much. So, so in these rules-based systems, make sure you're being smart about look-back windows. So you probably consider just 1 week data since the change to make your final decision. Okay, so that's rules-based. Now, the other strategy that you have is portfolio-based, and that's what Google will do for you. So Google has a number of portfolio bid strategies. I'm not going to cover this slide in great detail. You can get this off from Google. Now, the one thing that is important about portfolio bid strategies is that they are attempting to maximize the value across the entire portfolio. So as opposed to considering individual keywords or individual product groups, if you're doing e-commerce, so cheap clicks may subsidize expensive ones. And this is important because if you have a portfolio bid strategy that encompasses both branded terms and non-branded terms, well, guess what? Your brand terms are going to heavily subsidize your non-brand terms. So on an incremental, you're actually losing on some of the expensive clicks you're buying. And the only reason it works for your business is because the brand keywords are subsidizing those. So really the key point here is to make sure you think about what you group together in portfolios and whether you're okay with certain levels of subsidy happening. If you were a travel advertiser and you have a CPA target of say $15, well, great. If you're combining your cruises and your flights into one portfolio, you might actually reach that $15 CPA target. But if you broke it down, you might notice that cruises tend to have a higher than flights. Right? So again, it's about what is subsidizing what. You may still get your results, but understand where they're coming from. Okay, so let's go deep into a few tools now. So automated rules, these are basically your easiest way to get some automations up and running. You can find it right there. So you go right to it was on the 3 dots, the hamburger menu. So it says create an automated rule, and then you can select that right there. You can do this for keywords, ads, ad groups, and campaigns. Okay, so then this is the interface. If my position is less than 3, I want to raise my bid. And then you might have another rule to help you hit an average position. So if my position is greater than 2, then I decrease my bid. Okay, so and then that's set up, and now it's automated. Now, automated rules have very severe limitations. Solution for things that don't need to happen very frequently. But if you have an automated rule, you want to run it across multiple accounts that you manage as an agency or for your own business, they don't run across an MCC. So you would have to make one version of that rule at most once per day. So if you're doing something like checking that your budget is not being exceeded for the day, you could almost do it with an automated rule, but it can only run once per day. So what good is that, right? You don't know if you're going to be exceeding your budget at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. And if you pick the wrong look at, you're going to be going over the budget for the rest of the day. And then one other thing I don't particularly like about rules, if methods must all use the same look back. Quick here, poorly performing keywords. I probably if the keyword was doing badly for the last 7 days, but had actually done well before that. That keyword, I might want to go and figure out what I could fix so I can get it back to the way it performed in the past. On the other hand, if I see a keyword was doing badly for the last 7 days and also for the last year, it's the bad thing I want to get, right? So 2 different actions, but the way that I figure out what those actions are is by looking at different look back windows. So that's some of the stuff you could do with tools like Optmyzr or with stuff like AdWords scripts. So I'm not going to cover all of these in detail, but the slides will be shared tomorrow so you see automations. But when it comes to ad automation, running different ads on weekdays and weekends, very simple to set up. You can schedule promotional creatives to go live on a certain date, and you could pause ads that are not delivering conversions after a certain amount of spend. For reviewers that have quality less than 3. By the way, Google just made a big change for Google Grants accounts. So any keywords with quality score less than 2, are bad. They're not allowed to be in your account, so you could automatically go and remove those. And then the third one is actually kind of a cool one. Notify me of opportunities to get a lot more bid-based data. So you could literally say, if I were to raise my bid by just 10%, would that give me a significant boost in terms of the number of clicks? And if that's the case, send me an email. So basically sending you a notification about a great optimization opportunity. And higher budgets for days of the week that you really like, or to turn off budgets for days of the week. You can obviously also do some of this through the day part bid adjustments, and then some other automations there. But let's go and take a look at AdWords scripts, right? So these are really optimization. Now, AdWords scripts, these are based on JavaScript, and they can automate tasks in AdWords on a schedule that you define. They can run as often as hourly. It is JavaScript, so I'm looking at the attendance numbers. This is usually when I say the word code, when how but don't worry. The only thing you need to be able to do to actually implement this is hit Control-C and Control-V. If you can copy and paste, you can actually be up and running with a couple of scripts later today. So in the email to invite you, we promised we could get you some scripts up and running in about 10 minutes. This is what this is about. All right, so these scripts are amazing because they can do work in AdWords. They can look at reports. They can look at keywords. They can change bids. They can change budgets. Right? So it's a combination of looking at data and processing data and making changes. And in AdWords, they can also interact with other Google systems like Google Drive, Google Sheets, Google Calendar, Gmail. And so what that means, it's really easy to write a script that automatically sends you an email if something happens. Or if you want to generate a very sophisticated report, we built our core tool in Optmyzr, we were doing this through spreadsheets. So we had a script that would automatically calculate your account level quality score based off of some reports that we would pull in AdWords. Obviously, you could do this manually. You could spend an hour every day doing it, or you can just program it once or grab it already and then just put it on autopilot. Now, where it gets really exciting is the right side of this slide. So it's not just limited to talking to other Google systems, but AdWords can now talk to SQL databases or to your API. And what that means is use data outside of AdWords, but even inside your own business. So you could use your company data to feed it back into AdWords and actually do something smart. So you could imagine a bid management system that you build or that you modified through a script that actually looks at margin data from sales. Or it could connect to your CRM system and pull some data about long-term conversion rates and take that into account when it's doing bid and budget management. Or you can do something like the classic example that everybody likes to talk about, which is bid differently based on the weather, right? So if you really start promoting your snow tires when you see that it starts to snow in particular cities. That can be done by connecting to weather data. Every hour it checks, is it snowing? Yes, if it's snowing, enable my snow tire ads. Next hour, oh, it's no longer snowing or the snow is all melted. Go ahead and business signals, which makes it really cool. So now let me give you a couple of scripts ideas, and these mostly have links to the actual code that you can copy and paste into your account. That URL right there, that search engine length, SELND.com, automatically puts AdWords data onto a spreadsheet. Now, the AdWords API has 46 different types of reports that go far beyond what you can see in the AdWords interface. If you want to pull that data, we have the script, very easy to use, and then you can download your Google Sheets with exactly the reports that you need to do something else. And then, of course, because this is Google Sheets, you can have another automation that then pulls data from these automatically generated reports and does something very specific to your business with it. Now, this is a script that I wrote just about a week ago. And you have high spend, but no sales on certain keywords or product groups. This is going to check on a daily basis. and it's going to send an email to say, hey, dear advertiser, you've been spending too much. Now, this would have been a perfect example to do in automated rules, but again, automated rules can only run once per day. So just the little script does that thing on an hourly basis. Now, how do you tell this script what is your spend and your conversion threshold? So here's where I want to show that it's not actually very difficult to manage these scripts. So here's the code. Yes, it is JavaScript, it is code. But at the beginning of each script, I'm putting very easy flags or settings that you can just go and type in. So for what do you want to check, you can put in keywords or product groups, and we tell you exactly what to put in. So you change that text, and that makes it work on different types of entities. Then you see that next one, which is what is your maximum allowed cost, your minimum number of conversions, emails we should notify. So if you can open up this code, make a few quick changes in here, then you can do scripts. It's just as easy as that. And then the benefit, of course, is that if you want to go and do something a little bit more advanced, you actually can, because we give you the full code in these scripts. So you can do things. So now, if this still does scare you, we have a system in Optmyzr, which we call enhanced scripts. And there we handle all of these settings through a graphical UI, so you never even have to look at a piece of code. But here's another script that we built in response to what was happening. And again, actually very recently started showing ads on relatively offensive content. So we built a script that will look at placements that your ads have shown on, and it will look at the thumbs up versus thumbs down ratio of those videos. And you can tell us what the threshold is that you're willing to accept. So after a certain threshold of votes to positive votes, you are automatically going to be adding a negative placement for bad videos. And then this is another script that I built just this week that you can take. But basically, some people were saying we would like to automatically exclude placements that certain domain. So somebody, I think, was specifically asking to exclude Polish domains, so something with .pl. But you can run it for anything, right? So if you haven't been able to use the targeting in Google to get rid of certain placements, this script will literally say, did we get any impressions to the domain? So take that domain and automatically add it as a negative placement. So it's a huge time saver for showing you in the right place. You could also automate your holiday ads. So this is really pertinent right now in the holiday season, of course, but you could have a Google Calendar or a calendar that you maintain that has holidays on it. And you can have oh, today, February 14th is Valentine's Day. So let's put that holiday in the title of the ad. And then the next couple days later, it's President's Day. So we're automatically going to update the ad and put in that it's the President's Day sale. Now, one of the beauties here is that you can actually pull up the AdWords experts the ability to tweak what happens in your accounts, right? So if you have a sales department that figures out what kind of sales and what kind of discounts to run, rather than them having to email you about what's going to happen, you could literally say, here's a Google Calendar that shared us to automatically pick it up and make sure the ads are showing the right thing. And then bid automation, right? The tool Google's automated portfolio strategies, or you can write your own logic. So basically, if this happens, then that happens, right? So we have something in mind, my lost impression share is greater than 30. I want to increase my bids by 20%. So it's very simple rules-based conditions. And this is the type of stuff that's really easy to build through scripts. You can even do more advanced stuff. So the source article is right there at the bottom, but you could take inventory data, selling tickets, or if you were selling used cars, or if you were providing different services in different cities with different levels of discount. Say a plumber who's offering a $25 discount for people in LA, but maybe a $50 discount for people in Torrance, which is you can actually take this with some templates. And so we can then automatically do insertion of these different values to build what basically amounts to inventory managed advertising. So something like this would come out. This was all built on top of scripts. And the beauty here is that we're able to do a proof of concept. And then if we see that this actually works for our clients, or in your case, if it works for your business, then you can put some bigger resources towards it and actually build it out as maybe an API-based tool. So that's what come out of that. Not sure recently, this is automatically appending Google Slides with some data from your account. So this is great for having an appendix, right? So you usually put together some custom slides to show to your boss or to show to your client. But what we can do in this case is we can automatically put the raw underlying data in the question. You actually have the answer right there for them. And then this is a script you can pick up from free AdWords scripts, but this will do statistical significance ad text testing for you. All right, so I think we're getting close to the end here, but this is script so we can across an entire account find the best description lines, the best headlines, the best combination of headline 1 plus headline 2. It's a great foundation. It's a great report when you're ready to go and build new ad tests or ad texts. So, but these but I wish you could do something else. Could we actually get the script to do X, Y, Z? And that's exactly the beauty of the scripts, that yes, you can. If you are willing to get your hands a little bit dirty and go into the code, you can actually modify and make it do exactly what you need for your business. If you're scared of JavaScript, it is languages that's being used by developers, so it's also relatively easy to find a developer who will be able to take your requirements and turn it into an automation. So as far as getting started today, I gave you a lot of examples where you can just copy and paste the code, but here are a number of other websites, list scripts. So I'll let you all take a screenshot of this page. I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll move on. And again, you'll get a copy of these slides. But then if you want to run this, simply go into the new interface, the hamburger menu right there, bulk action scripts. In some cases, you're going to make a couple of tweaks like I showed you before in the settings, where it asks you to put in different settings. And then you preview it. So before you're actually going to make changes to your account, go ahead and hit the preview button. It'll tell you exactly what it would change. If that looks good to you, then go ahead and make sure you fix it first. And then you schedule it. So you can set it as often as hourly. The scripts can only run for up to 30 minutes. So if you have a really large account, sometimes it may not be able to process the whole account. If that happens, feel free to reach out to me and I can give you some secrets on how to deal with that. Also, make sure we run a report that pulls yesterday's data, then there's no point in running it 24 times a day. You can just do it once a day. And then after the script is run, you have some logs, so you can actually go and take a look at exactly what the scripts were doing. And that's kind of your job then as the co-pilot of the automation, is to periodically check in here, things around and what you wanted them to do. So with that, thank you very much for your time. I'd love to take some questions. You can also email me questions at fredrik@optmyzr.com. I'd love some ideas for upcoming scripts you would like me to post on Search Engine Land. And I'd love to give you a demo of the tools and the automations that we have.
All right, thank you, Fred. So we definitely had some questions come in throughout, so I'll run through those. And then if anyone has additional questions, please feel free to enter them into the question box so that we can answer them. So we had a question come in from Kelly that we know some scripts so that to be able to manipulate scripts or create people's own scripts.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. So I recommend free AdWords scripts. It has a section on how to get started in JavaScript programming. So that's freeadwordscripts.com. I don't know exactly where that's for JavaScript, and you should find it. And then Search Engine Land, this was about 2 years ago now, but they ran a great 3-part series on how to get started with scripts. It was maybe a little bit less JavaScript focused, but it did touch on some of the high-level concepts, and so that might be a good introduction as well. And if anyone, I'd love for you to come to my my master's classes. So at conferences like PubCon, I usually do an all-day master's class on this type of a topic, and there we go really deep on advanced settings, how to actually do JavaScript. So those are fun as well if you have the budget and do it.
Great, thank you. We have a question coming in from Rohan who said, how do these automated rules speak with the end user? Is it through emails, or is there a way to manage automated rules for different accounts?
Yeah, so the automated rules, you could just inside of AdWords, and they will then tell you what was actually done. It is optional to also send you an email, and so that's usually the way that they will communicate with you what happened. And I do understand, so if you're in a situation where you're managing multiple accounts, these things do get a little bit out of hand. You end up getting it's easy to miss something that happened. That's usually the situation where it makes sense to maybe go and take a look at an AdWords script. So Google has amazing AdWords scripts that they made available for individual accounts. We've taken some of them and turned them into MCC levels. It's not just across multiple accounts, but it's also about how the output should be produced to you. So rather than sending you 50 emails, one for each account, you could write the script such that it puts all of the data into one spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet basically becomes your dashboard. So now you look at one place, you see in red, account number 17, the automation broke, it didn't run correctly. Okay, so that kind of helps you stay on top of all of that. And the other thing, Rona, you make me think about here is it's often a good idea to think about how you can make automated rules and scripts work together. A lot of people like to make sure they haven't spent more than a certain budget for the month. That's the type of script you will want to run on an hourly basis. So you have to have an AdWords script. The automated rule just cannot do it frequently enough. Now the script, its purpose may be to pause your account if it hits a certain. But without pausing it, what about bringing the account back online? That is actually quite simple to do through an automated rule. And because you really only need to do the bringing back online at the start of every day or the start of every month, you don't need to do it hourly. So that's much easier to do through an automated rule. So in those ways, you can find it.
Great, thank you. So we have a question from Chris who said, using tools like Optmyzr and the Google Opportunities can throw up loads of keyword suggestions. Are there any scripts that can tell how long a keyword has been active so that you can pause the keywords that have been active for X amount of weeks with
Yeah, so that's sort of the million-dollar question. So we wish that AdWords and Google would give us access to the change history so that we could write scripts that do exactly that and are more time-based rather than quantity of impressions, for example. So I'm not medium scripted, however, you could certainly build it. So here's how you would build it. You would say every day, look at any keywords in my account that don't have a label with the start date, and then put today's date as the label on those, right? And so that indicates how long those keywords have been active. And then second, look at keywords with a label that meets certain conditions. So 90 days ago or 120 days ago, then does the evaluation and then takes the action that you want. So right, you have to write two scripts. It's quite a bit of programming, but that would be the way to do it.
Thank you.
And by the way, I'll say one more thing on that. So if you find that too daunting and you don't want to write that script yourself, I can certainly make introductions to good third-party scripts developers, or you can just go onto, these coding platforms and hire a developer.
Got it. So we have a question coming in from AJ who said, we run a lot of accounts and don't wish for our whole team to get involved in scripts for each account. Is there a PPC link checker service available somewhere so that the service checks for broken links?
Yes, so check for the broken landing page links. Can even check for a component of text on the page. So if it says out of stock, you could consider that broken as well, even if the page still loads. But kind of the underlying point that you're making there is you have a big team and you're kind of probably worried about everyone script. That's for a good reason, right? So the risk with JavaScript is that if you forget, say like a bracket, it could break the whole piece of code. And now if that was the code you were running across all of your clients, all of a sudden you've broken one process for the whole agency. That's really risky. Optmyzr has put in some framework that makes it really difficult to make mistakes and gives your whole team access to be able to tweak things through a graphical user interface where we basically guide you to what you need to put in, and that then prevents these types of mistakes hurting.
Thank you. We have a question coming in from John, who said, we have many products with significantly different margins. Can we push actual product costs or COGS into AdWords or Google Analytics or Optmyzr to get a product into information? Yeah,
exactly. So yes, you can bring in outside data like that, like your margin data, like your sales data. Third-party tools like Optmyzr are generally going to be your best bet for that. Now, I've also seen people use labels in AdWords or attributes for product ads to put in that data, and then it becomes a little bit more accessible inside of the Google interfaces. But they're generally not designed for that exact use case, so a third-party tool might be a better solution. So I'm happy to show you how Optmyzr would treat that.
Okay. And then we did have a couple of questions coming in, just more specifically asking about Optmyzr, the cost, what you guys do. So obviously, I know you were focusing not so much on specifically just on Optmyzr. It's kind of and we'll remind everybody how they can get in touch with you with additional questions, or if they're interested in learning more. Is it emailing you the best way to do that?
Yeah, feel free to email me there, Fredrik@optmyzr.com. It never hurts to CC support@optmyzr.com. They are much responsive. I will eventually. It just sometimes I'm traveling. That's a great way to get in touch, and we'd love to do one-on-one demos using your data. It's so Optmyzr is a PPC management software suite, so we help people make their AdWords and Bing Ads accounts better by management, keyword optimization, kind of anything and everything that you typically would want to do on an account. We build workflows to make those things faster. And we do very specific things. So we know that a lot of people like to run single keyword ad groups. So we facilitate one button that puts the pluses in front of everything. We have quality score trackers. We have data insights, word clouds, geo heat maps. Can put all of those on automated reporting so you can actually keep your clients and your bosses informed about what you're doing. And then we have a whole suite of enhanced scripts. We take some scripts and we can to set up, deploy across an organization where you have an MCC, multiple clients need to use it, but with different settings. So that's what Optmyzr does. So we're used by PPC experts and agencies predominantly to really make their lives much easier. It takes about 5 minutes or less to connect your data to our tool. You don't need to put in a credit card. There's a 2-week free trial. So we'd love for anyone who puts in their data to reach out to us, and we'll do a one-on-one demo. And usually within that hour, we $500 of wasted spend, turn that off for you. And at least pay you back for the half hour that you spent taking a look at this.
Wonderful. Well, I think that wraps up our questions. Thank you so much for such a fantastic presentation. Everybody be getting a replay email that will have a link to the video as well as a PDF of the slides within the next 24 hours. With that, thank you again for joining us for this 2017 Master Your Marketing series. Please definitely be on the lookout. Fred, I believe you're joining us for 2018. All good things to come, and we wish everybody a really happy new year and happy holidays and all of that. So thank you again, Fred.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Take care.